All right, so last week we talked about the 17 budgeting rules of thumb. This week, what I want to talk about is the 8 investing rules of thumb. These are really good rules of thumbs, guys. And what I said last week as well, these aren't like rock solid, like the only thing you can base your decisions on. These are good points to make and good rules to follow. But if you're a little inside or outside of these rules, it's not the end of the world. So the first rule of thumb is the rule of 72. This is more so to understand how much your money will compound with time. So how long it would take an investment to double. 72 divided by your rate of return, whatever your rate of return on an average annual basis is. Typically we talk about like 8 to 10%, but the reality is everybody's portfolio is structured differently to get a different annual return that suits you and your portfolio. So that will divide that by the rate of return, get you your years it takes to double. So let's just say you have a 10% return. 72 divided by 10 equals 7.2 years for your investment to double. So let's call it $10,000 will double in 7.2 years. So 10,000 turns to 20,000 in 7.2 years. Another 7.2 years goes by, assuming 10% returns. 20,000 turns to 40,000. 40,000 turns to 80,000. 80,000 turns to 160,000, so on and so forth. So aim to have your investments double every 10 years at a bare minimum. I think that's a really good rule of thumb to live by. Number 2, how much income you need in retirement. Go with 70% of your pre-retirement income. Here's exactly why. If you have a $100,000 salary, you're going to need a $70,000 a year retirement. Because when you actually start to withdraw strategically through tax advantages, loopholes that I talk about all the time, you're not going to need as much income as you once needed. Now, of course, you want to use the 4% rule to understand that your monthly expenses that are annualized are taken care of with this formula. But this is a great starting point of taking 70% of your pre-retirement income. Number 3, how to know when you're financially free. You take your annual spend. This is the 4% rule I was just talking about. You take your annual spend, all of your expenses, you multiply that by 25, and that's your freedom number. So if you're spending $4,166 a month, which turns into $50,000 per year, you would take $50,000 times 25 equals $1.25 million. This is a good way to set yourself up for a lifetime. And if you do this the right way, you're going to be really, really successful. So number 4 is how much to spend in retirement. 4% of your nest egg per year is a great rule of thumb. The individual that actually came up with the 4% rule has recently moved that to 5%. Again, I'm a very conservative individual, so instead of 4%, I might even move to 3.5% or 3% and guarantee my success and probability long term. And there's probabilities to this, so there's no guarantee based on the sequence of returns. So you got to be very careful of just assuming 4% forever or 5% forever, because the market takes different turns, and if you're pulling a ton of money out at the bottom, you're pulling a lot of money out of your portfolio. So you got to be careful, and please do not listen to Dave Ramsey that says pull 12% per year. That is ridiculous. The next thing is the net worth benchmarks. So a lot of people want to know where they should be at a given point in time in their life. Net worth benchmarks. Take your age times your gross income and divide that by 10. I'll give you an example. So a 30-year-old with a $100,000 salary should be worth $300,000. They're taking their age times their gross income and dividing that by 10. So 30 times 100,000, divide that by 10 equals $300,000. Number 6, what percent allocation you should have in stocks. Now, before I even say this, when I say rule of thumb, and like I positioned in the beginning, this is a rule of thumb. This is not an exact science. And in fact, I wouldn't want you to really use this rule of thumb directly. I want you to use a risk profile test that I talk with my students about, take them through a process of deciding, depending on which goal you have and which account accounts for that goal and how much you're putting into that specific account, is how much risk you should be willing to take on for that specific goal. And we set this all up one by one. And if you don't have this, you don't know what I'm talking about, go in the show notes below, book a call with my team because you need it. So if that's the case and you're taking this allocation, a very rough rule of thumb is taking 120, the number, and subtracting your age. So for example, if you're 20 years old, you take 120 minus 20 equals 100% in stocks, and obviously 0% other assets. Let's say I'm 30. So 120 minus 30 is 90, so 90% in stocks 10% in other. Maybe it could be bonds. Maybe it could be real estate. Maybe it could be, alternative assets, other things, Bitcoin, etc. So make sure you have this set up. And again, this should be based ideally on your specific goal. Every goal that you have that you've listed out, you've gone through my program, you've gone through my system. You have every goal, you have every account, you have every dollar amount, you have every allocation based on the specific risk you're willing to take on in the portfolio you're building for each specific goal. So it's not just one size fits all. 130 should have 90% stocks and 10% other. It doesn't always work like that. Number 7 is 401k match. Point blank. Always take the match. That's a 100% guarantee in your money. Unless you can find me something else out there, I don't think there's ever anything that's 100% guarantee on your money. Now, there's different vesting schedules with different 401ks, so be very careful about which kind of 401k you're signing up for. I don't know everybody's 401k. Some 401ks stink, some don't. But if you have this option, it's pretty hard to beat. 100% guarantee on your money. Number 8 is always a very intriguing one for parents out there, is child's education or retirement. I like to say child's education and retirement. However, save for your retirement first, then your child's education. You can get scholarships for school. You can't get scholarships for retirement, okay? And so put your oxygen mask on first. Supposedly that's crazy, and that's a Western ideology, but the reality is we have to make sure we're taken care of so we can give the best of ourselves to our kids. And if you haven't taken care of yourself and your kids aren't getting the benefit, you need to look inward and start to adjust what you're doing so that your kid is not getting hurt as a result of your decisions. Sometimes people will grow up, sometimes people will continue. My guess is if you listen to this podcast and you're listening regularly, you're not one of those parents and you're a good parent that means well for their children, and you're going to take the proper steps to help your child long term. So that's a wrap, guys. I want to keep this super short today and a very easy podcast for you guys to digest and start to apply to your life. So take last week's podcast, the 17 steps or 17 rules of thumb to budgeting, and then add on these 8 rules of thumb for investing. Take those 25 rules of thumb across all finance and apply those to your life, and you'll be amazed at how your life changes right in front of your eyes. And I hope the best, and I will see everybody next week.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brendan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.